How much time every day should a rabbi spend online? It's actually a very interesting question. I, of course, spend a lot of time online every day addressing emails, responding to emails, reading emails, connecting people. A lot of my work is actually done online. Of course, a lot of my work is done in person too. But being able to connect people, to bring together ideas, to learn about what other places are doing, to respond to people and their needs, and to invite them to come in to spend time with me, to arrange meetings and so on. There's a lot that needs to happen online in terms of work. And there's also a lot of learning online. I would say, and as many others have before me, that Sefaria, the website which gathers Jewish texts and has them in their original language, usually Hebrew, and also has translation and commentary, that has probably opened up access to Jewish texts more than ever before in the history of our people. So there are some extraordinary things and some real need for me as a congregational rabbi to be online. And yet, there are also many places of misinformation, disinformation, and there are places where people are torn apart and people argue and fight, particularly about misinformation. And you see the most extraordinary things being said online. Or maybe you don't, maybe you protect yourself from them. But I find it's important for me, at least in part, to experience them, to know what is the rest of the world saying. And the most extraordinary statement that I saw recently, at some point this week, where an individual, in all seriousness, said that they believe that what Israel has done in the last 2 years is worse than what the Nazis did during World War II. And it's such an offensive, such an absurd thing to say, morally, historically. It's so beyond understanding. I still struggle, even though I've been wrestling with this for many hours, struggle with how anyone could possibly say that with a straight face, other than being based totally in Jew hatred. How is it that people have got to this point? And what do I do as a rabbi learning about this? Well, I think one of the things is about misinformation. We are moving from an information age to a misinformation age or a disinformation age. And it's very hard to know who to trust or what to trust online. In fact, there are videos. I'm normally very good at spotting these things. Very good, actually, at spotting AI videos and so on. But one got me the other day. And to my real shock, realizing that the things that we see, even videos that we see, aren't necessarily real. They can now be created through AI. And so we as a Jewish community have a real responsibility to address the truth. And what does that mean, the truth? There are some things which are objectively true, historically true, factually true. And then there's relative truth, which is different people's opinions on things. And somebody is entitled to hold an opinion so long as they can defend it. And if they can't defend it, then they should be able to move to a place of changing their opinion. And you always know when you're talking with someone online what kind of person you are, whether or not they dig their heels in, which is what people normally do, or whether or not they actually learn, apologize, grow, say, that's a good point. Thank you for teaching me that. That happens very rarely. So, how much time should a congregational rabbi, spend online? Of course, my priority is always with our members. It's always with people who are here. And I spend many hours a day meeting with members of our community, either in official meetings, in pastoral meetings, planning meetings, and so on. And yet, I do think it's my role, or particularly the role of the community, to keep an eye out for misinformation, disinformation, and to learn to combat it. And the reason I think that is so important is because if we don't combat disinformation, then that becomes assumed to be true. And then the Jewish community ends up being on the defensive, saying, no, it's not like that at all, but people aren't listening because they're so convinced of what is true. And so we find ourselves at a really interesting point in the Jewish community, where in the past, we assumed everyone had a basic sense of decency in how to conduct a discussion or an argument, even a heated argument. But that's no longer true. Facts don't necessarily matter anymore. It's particularly sound bites and opinions, whether they're based on fact or not. And the problem with that is that when people say things that aren't true about Israel or about the Jewish community, that can lead to anti-Semitism if it isn't already an expression of anti-Semitism. That can lead to actual real-world consequences, physical harm to members of the Jewish community. It can lead to bullying in schools. It can lead to bullying in places of work. It can lead to actual security threats against the Jewish community and Jewish institutions. So I think we have to think this year, as we're starting to explore our sacred task, one of the things we have to think about is what's our role in combating misinformation and disinformation? Is that part of our sacred task? It's actually a really interesting conversation. It shouldn't necessarily be me, the community's rabbi, who's keeping an eye on things. It should be other people helping us form a community response. And that's different to our response to addressing anti-Semitism, although they are very similar, and maybe they're connected. And I want to share we're making good progress again with the Santa Fe Public Schools addressing anti-Semitism. And you're going to hear hopefully more about that in the coming months. But we as a community need to ask ourselves, what do we do now that things have changed? Now that information that is being given to us might not be real at all. Videos that we see may not be real at all. Where do we find truth? An orthodox answer would be in Torah. You find truth in our tradition, in our texts. And of course, it's really important for us to read our text, to read our tradition, to engage in it, to find God, to find new meanings in our text. Of course, that's important. Yet we in the Reform movement also recognize how essential it is that we go out and combat negative perceptions, negative statements, things that might lead to anti-Semitism if they're not anti-Semitism already. And so I leave you with a sort of lingering question of what do we do? How much time should a rabbi be spending online? If you think, like me, the answer is not very much, then what are we as a community going to do about that misinformation spread, including misinformation about Jews and about Israel? How are we going to engage in the outside world in friendly, loving ways, like interfaith dialogue, but also in more challenging ways, challenging misinformation and disinformation? And I think it's very easy for us to engage in the first. We've rather avoided the second, and we need to work out what that means for us as a community. So feel free to ask yourself that question. How much time should Rabbi Neil spend online? And then, based on that answer, let's work out what it means for us as a community to combat misinformation and disinformation about the Jewish community, not just here in Santa Fe, but worldwide as well. I hope you'll be able to join us this evening for our Kabbalat Shabbat service. Tomorrow morning's Torah study is on Zoom only. There's a new link for Zoom. Please pay attention in the e-digest to the new link. Don't use the old link, it won't work. And then join us for a next Bar Mitzvah ceremony. We have 4 in a row, which is really exciting for our community. Again, another wonderful young man, really intelligent, really passionate and caring about his Judaism, a lovely family too. We ask that you please come and join us in person for that. Torah study is online only, on Zoom only, and it's going to finish early so that everyone can come to our Bar Mitzvah ceremony. I hope to see you then, and I wish you Shabbat Shalom.